Hi everyone. I'm Amarachandra. I know most of you, not everyone. And we are week 2 of a series we're doing, looking at just one little sutta, one little story or thread from the vast early teachings of the Buddha. So from the Pali Canon. And we're looking at the Meghia Sutta. Artisidi started us off last week, and we only got this far into the sutta, and I've been told, don't go any further. Someone else is going to take up the exciting next step. So I have to hold back from, from what happens next. I mustn't rush ahead. But I thought I'd talk about the sutra again, give the sutta, sorry, give us the context again so that we have the scene. So we have the Buddha and his young companion Meghia, and it's just the two of them, and they're walking from village to village, and the Buddha's doing a bit of teaching, but it sounds like they're sort of having a bit of a quiet time, and they're staying outside of a little village. And Artisidi gave the name of the last week, but I didn't write it down. So if anyone can look it up. And just the two of them. But the Pali Canon suttas always start, thus have I heard. And when I'm listening to these, reading or listening to these suttas, and someone says, thus have I heard, I feel happy. I hear it and I think, oh yeah, this is something I know. This is the teaching of the Buddha. This is the words of the Buddha, and it immediately my heart opens up. I feel very receptive once I've heard. Thus have I heard. So it also gives an indication to the oral teaching, so that the fact that this was an oral tradition. Thus have I heard. So someone's telling us what they've heard. So it's not that the Buddha's scribe sort of sat down, or the Buddha in fact sat down and wrote out what his teaching in a sort of a golden book that was sort of to be preserved forever. They were oral teaching, so it's the Buddha's encounter with someone else, and someone's recalling it and remembering it. So and it often sort of says, thus have I heard, and then it will say the Buddha was staying at such and such a place with these people. So it gives us a little bit of contextual information. So in this one it says the Blessed One was staying among the Kalikans at the Kalikar mountain. So I don't know where that is, we don't know where that is, but it sounds nice, doesn't it? And if you did know at those times, you could give it a bit of context. I guess the Buddha and Meghia must have told this story, because it's only the two of them at the time, so somebody's remembered it. So the Buddha and Meghia have stayed overnight in this grove just outside the village, and Meghia gets up and he does his things, and then he says to the Buddha he'd like to go into the town to beg for alms. So at that time, the Buddha and monks today in that tradition, they go out and they beg for food. And if you go to Thailand or Sri Lanka or other sort of early countries where they sort of practice this traditional form of Buddhism, you'll see the monks, sometimes even the nuns, going around with these enormous bowls, and people will sort of put food in. So they're living this life for meditation, for gaining insight. And there's this reciprocal arrangement. Maybe they'll do some teaching and they'll support the villagers to practice Buddhism, and in return the villagers give them food and alms. So Meghia asks to go into town to beg for food or to beg for alms, and the Buddha says, "Do what you think it is time for," or Meghia, "Do what you think it is now time to do." The Buddha often says this. And sometimes I say it to people too, do what you think it's time. And the text tells us that Meghia then adjusts his robe and his bowl. It's not very formal. and then he sets off into town. And he, oh, here it is, Jantu village, I did write it down, and he goes for alms. And then he comes back and he walks by the river. And as he's walking by the river, he sees a delightful mango grove, pleasing and charming, he says it is. Oh, so that sounds very nice. I'd like to go to a mango grove. I don't know if people have seen mango trees. I'm from Australia. People have started growing mango trees. When the mangoes are on the trees, it's like, you know, I really like some mangoes. I often can't jump high enough. But I thought a whole grove of mango trees would be awesome. That sounds like a very pleasing spot. And our city was saying last week, they're very shady. So in the heat of a sort of an Indian summer, a mango tree would be a perfect spot to meditate. So he sees this beautiful mango grove and it's a perfect spot to meditate. So he thinks, if the Blessed One, if the Buddha will give me permission, I will come back and come to meditate here. So he goes back to the Buddha and he asks the Buddha, please give me permission to go. I'd love to go and meditate in this mango grove. I think it's the right time. And the Buddha says, as long as I'm still alone, stay here until another monk comes. Bubble burst. I sort of feel he's like, so I can feel he probably waits a little while, but then he comes back to the Buddha and he says, oh, come on, like you're the Buddha, you're already enlightened. I'm just a striver. I've got such a long way to go. Please, now is the time for me to go to the mango grove and to get right stuck into my meditation. And the Buddha says, well, until I'm alone, so until another monk comes, just wait. Anyhow, I don't know how long the next pause goes for. He comes back to the Buddha with the same argument. Please, please let me go. I really want to go and meditate. I am not enlightened. You're enlightened. You're telling me no, but I need to get enlightened. And on the third ask, traditionally, you have to say yes. So the Buddha says, do what you think it is time for. So that's what he says. Yeah. So what are we to make of this? Well, I quite like Meghia because Meghia's a bit like me, a bit like us, really, isn't he? He's there with the Buddha. He's there with the Buddha. But he's like, I think I'll go over there. I think I could do better on my own. So the ideal conditions are somewhere else. But he says in the text, it's like, if the Blessed One will give me permission. It's like but he's not hearing his own words because the Buddha's not giving him permission. But he keeps enforcing it. But this phrase, do what you think it is time for, it's a really, really key phrase. So at the beginning of the text, he asks to go to beg for alms, and the Buddha says, do what you think it is time for. So I imagine in that, it's like, well, once you've done your morning things, have you, once you've meditated, perhaps cleaned up around the little site that they're sharing, once you've done the things that you need to do, if it's time, go. That's right. So, do what's the right thing for you to do at this moment. But the second time, it's different, isn't it? He's being sort of forced. And he doesn't say, yes, I give you permission. He also doesn't say, no, don't. You just can't. He's already said that twice. He never says no, actually. He says, oh, could you just wait? So he doesn't say, I give you permission. He doesn't say absolutely no. He puts the responsibility back onto the person making the decision, to Meghia. Do what you think it is time for. This, whatever you want, you're making this decision. You take responsibility for it. So I think that's really key in here. It's not about the Buddha giving permission. It's about the person then taking responsibility for the decisions that they're going to make. So I think that is really key in here. Yeah, you do what you think it is time for. Yeah, so yeah, I've got here, Damien. Meghia says he's looking for permissions. He's looking even for support or the blessings of his teacher, but he's not really hearing what the Buddha's saying. So he's feeling like, oh, I'm no better than the Buddha. And Dante's Amarachandra used to sort of say people would come to him and ask for advice, and he would sort of know that people would actually just do what they wanted to do anyway. so, and sometimes you can hear that with a friend, can't you? Someone's sort of trying to talk something over, and you can hear it's like, oh, this is what they want to do. This is, you know, I remember I had a friend who was asking me about a really, really crucial situation, something that was going to have, they thought they were in process. And I remember sort of saying to myself, the train has left the station. They were trying to talk about it, but actually it was already in progress. So, you know, we've got our emotional life, haven't we? We've got all sort of the unseen areas. We've got sort of what's propelling us forward. Sometimes we're asking for our friends to actually confirm what we're wanting to do. So we're not really talking it over. We kind of know what we're going to do. But still, we can talk to our friends. We can talk to people who are a bit more experienced than we are. We can sort of talk about different sort of consequences. And in this sense, this sort of do what you think it is time for is a request for us to take responsibility for our actions. So it's my action, and I take responsibility. So it's just a little phrase in there, but I think it's really important because the Buddha's not acting as the sort of the all-powerful Buddha, you know, who you have to get permission from in every sort of way. In Buddhism, you take responsibility for what you do, and in this little phrase, it's sort of showing that you take responsibility for your life and how you act in your life. The other part of this, which is sort of quite lovely, is the Buddha says, as long as I am still alone, stay until another monk comes. I thought, oh, that's interesting. Like, is that something about safety? You know, being alone in a sort of in a forest sort of setting or on the edge of the village? Is that for safety? You know, there must have been bandits and robbers. It must have been a bit dangerous. Maybe there are snakes and elephants and other sort of wild animals. Maybe there's something there around safety. Maybe it's something about companionship as well. So the Buddha always had a companion. Maybe the Buddha doesn't want, the Buddha can be alone, but maybe he prefers to have someone there, like a friend. I don't know, you sit with a friend and you can look out at a beautiful landscape. You can just sort of sit there and appreciate it, and you don't have to speak, but you're doing it in sort of companionable silence. You can do it alone. But sometimes doing it with someone is just such a bit of a bigger experience. So why the Buddha said, you know, as long as I'm still alone, can you stay here? I don't really know, but maybe there's just something about the Buddha also liking to have human company, also liking to have a companion. The Buddha was a human being after all. He wasn't just a sort of guy with long ears and sort of funny thing. He was a human being, and he probably liked a bit of companionship. Anyhow, more importantly, as I said, Meghia has the Buddha right there. He's got the Buddha right there, but he sees the opportunity for practice to be over there in the mango grove, and he misses the opportunity to be with the Buddha. Yeah, so he's got his enlightened teacher there. So there's something about receptivity and sensitivity that our friend Meghia is missing. And again, I sort of can relate. I've definitely there's a few people. Been a few times where I've sort of thought back. Someone's left Cambridge, and I've thought, oh, I wished I'd been more in contact with that teacher before they left. I didn't take full advantage of them being here. I was perhaps a bit shy, or I thought, oh, my questions won't be very good, or they wouldn't really want to hang out with me, whatever my small story is. And then they've gone, and I thought, oh, what an idiot. Why didn't I they would have been happy sleeping. I could have just gone and asked my questions. I could have gone and developed a connection and a friendship. You know, I do feel there's a few regrets, and I sort of feel like, oh yeah, like Meghia, I didn't know how to make use of the person who was here, who I could have just sat next to in a way. I didn't have to be anyone to just go and sort of talk to them about my questions or meditation or my fears and my you know, sort of doubts and things like that. I could just be me, and we could just sit alongside each other. And I could sort of just be with them and have a friendship where that exchange happens. So I definitely feel like, oh yeah, I've been with Meghia, I've been with the teacher, and not really knowing how to make use of it. But it does seem a real oversight on Meghia's part, doesn't it? And I've got this little bit from Amarachandra, where he sort of says, you mustn't think of the Buddha trying to communicate his enlightenment experience as though it was something distinct from himself. So you mustn't think of the Buddha trying to communicate his enlightenment experience as though it was something distinct from himself, as though it was something that he had. No, the enlightenment experience was not different from the Buddha himself. So being with the Buddha is being with an enlightening being, or being with enlightenment. The Buddha was enlightened. The Buddha was the enlightened one. The Buddha was the Buddha. So in these encounters, the Buddha's trying to communicate himself. He wasn't trying to communicate anything in particular. He was just trying to communicate, or even to be in communication. So in this sense, the Dharma is no different from the Buddha. And the Buddha said this towards the end of his life. He said, you know, now that the Buddha's gone, now that, you know, he was going to die, but it's like the Buddha is the Dharma and the Dharma is the Buddha. The Dharma is another word for the teachings of the Buddha, or in like a sense of reality, you know, the truth, the reality. So, so being with the Buddha was an experience of being with, was an experience of that teaching coming through, but not through teaching, just through his presence. So Meghia could have stayed and asked questions about meditation and different philosophical questions, but he also could have just been there and been with the Buddha. And maybe we can just have a moment to think, like, what would that be like? Like, what would we get? What do you think you'd see from being with the Buddha? Or what do you think you'd experience from just being in this little campsite, this little grove of trees with the Buddha, just hanging out? Like, what would he be like? What would it be like to be there with the Buddha? I'm actually going to ask, what qualities, or what do you think you get from being with the Buddha? Sense of calm, because he's so calm. Yeah, yeah. So you'd imagine you'd just have a sense of calm just from being in his presence. Me too. Yeah.
taken care of a little bit, like you just feel very welcome all the time.
Yeah, he'd be aware of
Caring,
you.
aware,
Yeah, he'd be aware of you. So yeah, that's right. He'd be aware of you. He'd sort of be taking care. Yeah, I think that's right. Imagine being around someone that mindful. You know, that sort of, that, imagine being around someone that mindful. That would be a teaching just in itself. I'd really know where everything was, and I'd never know where anything is. You know, I'd really be taken up to a next level, wouldn't I? You know, like, where's my road? Where's my I've only got a couple of possessions in this scenario, but you know, they're definitely not around easily to hand. You know, where did I put my begging bowl? It would be me. But if I was with the Buddha, I'd be definitely stepped up to that next level. So imagine being with that presence. Yeah, yeah. I wonder just what he'd do. What would he do in that in-between space, between doing things? I mean, what does the Buddha do anyhow? You know, he hasn't got the newspaper to read. It's like, what's he going to do? So, you know, that would be interesting. What does the Buddha do in between? So just imagine being in that situation with the Buddha and all that could be communicated about that enlightened mind, that enlightened experience, that enlightened being, just being there.
But I think you'd have to be quite a confident person to be able to just be with.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possibly quite intimidating. I feel
Yeah,
sorry for
yeah.
Meghia. I can.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be that. It could be that.
It'd be
It
terrifying.
doesn't come through. Sorry.
It'd be terrifying.
It could be terrifying. Yeah, it's a bit like me thinking, oh, I could go and talk to those teachers. It's like, oh, God,
Yeah.
what am I going to say? So yeah, it could be a bit terrifying. It could be a bit too much.
I think there's something that like push you though. Like I used to sing in a wedding band, and like whenever I played with like really good musicians, I was so much better because I had to
Yeah.
not let the side
Yeah,
out.
that's it.
Yeah, so maybe your meditations would be awesome for that. I feel like.
That's true. You would just sit
Yeah.
near the Buddha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it could be all those things. But Meghia feels like if I go it alone, if this mango grove, I can I'll be able to. He sort of misses the opportunity of the Buddha Dharma right there in his midst, and he thinks if I go off, I'll be able to do it on my own. I think that's his main problem, actually. You know, I'll be able to do it on my own. But you know, I can relate to Meghia, and I can relate to these other Buddhist figures that sort of come through. Sort of Ananda, sometimes the Buddha's companion, gets a sort of you know, he sort of misses the point sometimes. Or in the Mahayana Sutras, Sariputra is always worrying about the practicalities of things. And it's like, oh yeah, you know, you need someone in these stories that you can relate to as, you know, as the Buddha sort of sits, you know, calm and mindful like a sort of great elephant. It's like, yeah, well, I'm the person who sort of thinks, you know, go to the mango grove, or where's my bowl? Yeah. And of course, sometimes we can't really see the most appropriate thing, even when it's right there in front of us. So, yeah, so there's something about these suttas that they're very specific stories, but they've got this quality of speaking to us all. So we were sort of just talking about suttas that we know and suttas that we don't know and what we're familiar with. And sometimes you might sit down, I don't know how many of you have, and you sort of get one of those great big Pali Canon texts. You think, I'm going to read some early Buddhism. You read and think, oh, I don't know what that one's about. And then you sort of turn to it and you read that, the next one, you think, oh, okay. So some of them speak to us a bit more clearly than others. Some of them speak to us in different contexts a bit more clearly as well. But what I really like about them is that they're specific. So they are encounters between the Buddha and actual people. And I think sometimes the resonance, the ones that become a bit more well known, are the ones that that we need to hear and that resonate with us. And so that even though there's specific encounters with person X, with Meghia, actually, probably there's quite a few Meghias around the world. And so it really, really speaks to us. Yeah, so I was sort of thinking it's, you know, being with the Buddha is being with the enlightened being, but it's also being with my potential, you know, and that is a bit hard to hold in with. You know, so the Buddha is also the potential of me, potential of all of us to sort of grow and develop, and maybe that's just too much to be with. Yeah, yeah. So these fantastic sort of this fantastic resource of all these examples of all these encounters between the Buddha and people throughout the ages. These spoken words, thus have I heard, these spoken words, these direct communications to the individual, but you know, they're so sort of able to be applied in all sort of these different contexts, even 2,500 years later. I was thinking, you know, sometimes so the Buddha spoke to each individual as with what they needed. We'll hear a bit more of his story and what happened to him in the mango grove in the following weeks. But it reminds me of a particular sutta where this young man is in meditation, and he's completely caught up in, it could be a young woman as well, completely caught up in thoughts of sex, just completely thinking about sex all the time. And so he takes this to the Buddha. And you would think that the Buddha would say, okay, just stop. That's not the thing to do. Don't think, you know, like, but the Buddha says, why don't you think of pink-footed nymphs? So he describes these sort of beautiful pink-footed nymphs. And they're kind of like, in the context of the sutta, they're kind of real goddesses. Maybe you can just see their pink feet. I think there's something about that, but he sort of encourages us, think of these pink-footed nymphs. And there's something about the quality that the Buddha can see in this person, that actually he doesn't get distracted so much by sex anymore. The pink-footed nymphs are really beautiful, and they're kind of refined, and they're sort of opening up to a world of beauty rather than a world of sort of sex and sexuality in that sort of way. They're more ethereal. So he's opened up to this world of beauty, but he's using his energy to take him in a direction that opens him up to beauty. So that may or not apply to us at any given moment, but it might do, and you might think, oh, okay, I need more beauty, to sort of take it as a thing, more beauty in my meditation. So these are direct communications from the Buddha, and we can sort of use them to see if they apply to us. Yeah, Amarachandra says that when we read the scriptures, we're overhearing what the Buddha says to other people. So, you know, does that sort of apply to us? So I was thinking, we've got the Buddha and the Dharma, sort of the Buddha and the Dharma right at the center. We've got the mango grove. So that's, you know, that's what's sort of longed for, the mango grove. And then we've got the young man with his self-knowing, what he needs to know. And I was sort of thinking about these three sort of different elements in the story. And well, I think that what I need to do, the I know best, can be our habits and our views and our ways of thinking, of seeing things. Often we sort of talk about our samskaras. So that's the Buddhist term for these sort of really deep set habits and views and ways of seeing things. We've got our samskaras, and his samskara is definitely, I need to do this on my own. I don't need the Buddha right at this moment. So but it's got quite a big eye in there. And I was thinking, well, sometimes we're attracted to the mango grove, but actually sometimes our samskaras might take us more to a swamp. So we actually sort of end up in a bit of a swamp, or we end up in a busy city with a lot of lights and distractions, or we might end up in a painful cemetery of regret or despair. Where do our samskaras take us? It's not always to the sort of gorgeous mango grove. And so in those sort of situations, what do we need? Well, we need the Buddha Dharma. That's what we need. We need something true that we can rely on, something that we can be receptive to, that will help us sort of come back from the mango grove of bliss or disappointment, or the swamp of despair, or wherever we've sort of our samskaras, wherever our sort of habits have taken us. So I really like the term to have the Dharma in your pocket, something that we can have sort of readily to hand, something that's meaningful to us, that helps us touch down on that Buddha Dharma quality, something that sort of is a resource. So I was thinking of a few of mine. One of them is the mudra of fearlessness. So this Buddha here, I think he's doing more of a teaching, that sometimes you see the Buddha or Bodhisattva with one hand up with a gesture that means fearlessness. Sometimes the gesture is more like this, held to the heart, and the three fingers up represent the three jewels. So you can be fearless because you can rely on the three jewels. I can use that gesture as a kind of a way to come back to myself and my situation, and feel like, well, what's the next step that I need to do? How can I be fearless? You know, with the sort of Dharma perspective, with the sort of Buddhist perspective, how can I go where I don't want to go, or stay when I don't want to stay? How can I be a bit fearless in this situation? So that's just a little mudra, a little gesture of fearlessness that I can have as my Buddha in that moment, or my Dharma reflection. I also have a little phrase that I call upon, and actually a friend taught it to me. She used to use it, and I loved it so much that I sort of picked it up and I started to use it. So the phrase is, as many times as your heart wants to close, keep it open. As many times as your heart wants to close, keep it open. And I've got that when I need it. It's a resource, it's something I can easily bring to mind. Yeah, so another Buddha. Mantra is another, something else I can bring. I can sort of recite a mantra. And also ethical practice. Sometimes I'll have a theme in my ethical practice that also connects me in a way to the Buddha Dharma. Truthfulness is one aspect. So we've got truthful speech as the fourth precept, but truthfulness is more than just speech, isn't it? It's an honesty within myself, an honesty to sort of stand in the moment and see things as they really are, see things really sort of truly as they are. So taking truthfulness as a sort of guide or a challenge or an ethical precept. That sort of these things help ground me in the Dharma, help ground me in that Buddha when I might be going to my swamp of despair or my mango grove of sensuous desire. You know, when I've got sort of my habitual tendencies wanting to take me off away from the Buddha resource, away from the Buddha Dharma resource, or away from something that's a bit more real. If the Buddha, you're just getting to know who the Buddha is. You know, the Buddha as the light really, something that represents truthfulness, authenticity, calm, supportiveness, all these sorts of qualities that sort of reflects reality, sits with reality, and reality can be a bit scary. So sometimes you need a few resources to sort of be there with that. Yeah. So I thought from this story where we're at, we might just get into groups. And do you have things that you can call on in your life? You know, things that sort of are meaningful to you, that are sort of resources like that. And if not, maybe there's something that you'd like to develop. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. So let's just get into groups of 3 or 4 and let's sort of talk for about 15 minutes. Or any other aspect of the story. Yeah, could you put that up on? I'm just wondering if anyone would like to share any of the anything they were sort of talking about. I'd be really interested, really curious to know. Oh yeah. Close up the film. I heard you talking about one thing, Phil. Can I put you in the hot seat anyhow? It was sort of, what was this?
Oh, that was a combination of ideas. We called it the power pose, I think, in the end.
Sassy.
And it was sassy.
That was sassy. But tell us.
It was about having confidence and like I think we were talking about boundaries and being kind and balancing that out. I think that's kind of where it started from.
Yeah. So this gesture.
Yeah, it was like strength. That's where it came from.
Strength.
Strength and yeah,
Wonder Woman.
ethics and Wonder Woman.
The Wonder Woman mantra. I feel powerful already. Anyone else? Any advances on Wonder Woman?
Yeah, I got one. For those of us who've got older names, they're very meaningful. And sometimes just someone calling you by your older name, it reminds you of what it is you're supposed to be doing. And like in my own case, my name means the King of Faith. And I have to remember that sometimes, because it's quite a high thing to aim for.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what's your name mean again?
Deathless Moon.
Deathless Moon.
Yeah, thanks, Sadharaja, King of Faith. Anyone else like to share something that they have as a resource, sort of Buddha Dharma in the pocket?
We discussed as recollecting friends.
Recollecting friends.
Particular friends in the side that are more further ahead of you in the path, but it really evokes certain
Yeah.
qualities for you.
Yeah.
It's reflecting on them as well. In their
Oh, nice. Yeah, you do that.
I hadn't been doing it as a deliberate practice, but now that we start getting better, I realised, yeah, that's something that I need
Yeah.
to do with
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah. We were talking in Mitra study about people we admire. That sort of thing, isn't it? You have to. It's good sometimes to make it really clear, isn't it? Make it explicit. It's like, oh yeah, these are qualities I admire. I want to move towards this. Otherwise, it's a bit hidden and it's a bit sort of soupy. And you know, the more things are explicit, the more you can really move towards something. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, well, I think that's. Oh, sorry, it's a very important one, in fact.
I'm partly introducing Daniel, it's his first night.
That's very good of you, Mani.
And it's one of his resources was the fact he works in a seasonal, he's outdoors. This is something of a gardening designer. So it's the season keeps repeating itself.
Yeah.
That is what we call in our school practice right livelihood.
Mm.
You know, an outdoor job with nature, it's a right livelihood. I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, it's enough about him.
But so you feel like you've got a job that is aligned with your values, is that the sort of thing you would, Manny was
Are you
talking?
talking to me or?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, well,
Manny was bringing it out for you, but I was just trying to be clear.
what was the question?
Manny was bringing out something about your work being right livelihood. So,
Right, okay,
so
yeah,
is that what you were sort of like? It's
yeah, the
feels-
resource of just, I said I just felt very lucky that I have a job that I get to do that. And I think I kind of said, well, but if you keep on gardening in the same place for a few years, then you get to transform and watch it transform, and that is very valuable. And you get up and you're going to go, I'm going to go to that place, and you know it's going to be the same, it's going to be different, and that you've also been responsible for it. And that's you know, it's always been has been a comfort over, you know, as I've got better as a gardener.
Yeah. There's a lot of wisdom in that, isn't there? If you can sort of see the effort you put in, but the change and the repetition and the sort of things coming round, and yeah. Thank you. That sounds great. Good. Well, that is that for this evening.